Okay, I want you to try something with me for a second.
Oh, okay.
Right now.
Mhm.
Just stop and really think about what your brain is doing at this very moment. You're hearing a stream of noise from a speaker, and your brain is just instantly turning it into ideas.
Right.
And if you were reading this, your eyes would be scanning these little black squiggles on a page, and you'd basically be hallucinating a voice in your head.
It feels completely automatic, right?
Yeah, like breathing. It feels
Yeah.
like the most natural thing in the world.
Mm.
But that's the hook that grabbed me when I was looking into this.
Mhm.
Reading is so deceptive. It feels simple because we're good at it, but biologically,
Yeah.
we have no business being able to do it. It's this unnatural act that hijacks parts of the brain meant for other things.
It's a perfect way to put it. I mean, we are absolutely wired to speak. You put a baby in a room with people talking and they'll learn to talk.
Sure.
But you put that same baby in a room full of books, they will never spontaneously learn to read, ever. It's a
Yeah.
cultural invention, not some biological switch.
And that invention is what we're taking apart today. We're doing a deep dive into the science and development of reading skill.
And our guide here is a really comprehensive handbook chapter by Richard K. Wagner, Shane B. Piasta, and Joseph K. Torgeson. I mean, these are some of the heaviest hitters in the field.
They really are. And they're synthesizing what they call a flood of knowledge on literacy.
Flood is definitely the right word, because for a long time, this field was, well, it was a desert.
That history surprised me. I sort of figured we'd been studying reading since, I don't know, Gutenberg. But the source says it all starts with Wilhelm Wundt in Germany.
Right, late 1800s. Wundt is pretty much the grandfather of experimental psychology. He was using this machine, a tachistoscope, to flash words for just a fraction of a second.
Just to see what the eye could grab.
Exactly. It was the birth of the science of reading.
And then
Yeah.
it just went dark. The source says research basically stopped for 40 years. What happened?
Behaviorism happened.
Oh, right.
So in the 1920s, psychology, it did this massive shift where the only thing that mattered was observable behavior.
The whole stimulus response thing.
Exactly. Stimulus and response. And since reading is this internal cognitive process, something happening inside the black box of the mind, well, they just stopped looking.
So we lost decades of research because we couldn't literally see the gears turning.
Pretty much. It wasn't until the cognitive revolution in the 1960s that we were allowed to think about thinking again. And then the real explosion came around the turn of the millennium. You have policies in the U.S. like No Child Left Behind.
And whatever you think of the politics, that meant a huge injection of cash into research.
A fire hose of cash. So what we're talking about today isn't just theory. It's the result of billions of dollars and decades of really rigorous science.
Right.
We finally know how the machinery works.
Okay, so let's get into that machinery. The authors define reading pretty simply. It's just understanding a message by decoding a script.
Right, and they make the point that while the scripts are different, you've got Chinese characters, the English alphabet, the way the brain fails to learn, is remarkably universal.
Because the basic problem is always the same.
Always. Connect a symbol you see with a unit of language you know. And to get there, we have to look at 3 layers of language: phonology, morphology, and orthography.
Okay, let's start with phonology, the sound part. I read this section a few times, and it's still kind of bending my brain. The source calls it an acoustic illusion.
It's one of the hardest things for a literate adult to wrap their head around. Okay, imagine we're looking at a spectrogram of my voice right now.
Like a printout of the sound waves.
Exactly. And I say a sentence like, "The cat sat on the mat." What do you think you'd see on that printout?
I mean, I expect to see a block of sound for the D, then a little gap, then cat, then a gap.
And that is the illusion. Physically, on that readout, it is one continuous, unbroken ribbon of sound energy. There are no gaps.
Wait, no, but I can hear the gaps right now. I can hear where cat ends and sat begins.
You perceive the gaps because your brain is editing the audio in real time. You know English, so your brain just inserts silence where there isn't any. It's why when you listen to a language you don't speak, it just sounds like one long, breathless word.
Because my brain doesn't have the software to add the breaks.
Exactly. You are hallucinating the structure.
That's wild. Okay, so we're making it up.
We are. And it gets even weirder when you get down to individual sounds. The source has this great example, the hand test. You want to try it?
I'm in. What do I do?
Just put your hand right in front of your mouth.
Okay, done.
All right, say the word top.
Top. Whoa, okay, big puff of air in my hand.
Now say stop.
Stop. Barely any air at all.
Right. And now try pot.
Pot. Yeah, that's somewhere in the middle.
So physically, those 3 T sounds are completely different. They are distinct phones. But here's the magic trick. In English, your brain hears all three and just says, that's a T. It ignores the physical reality to create a functional category.
Because that little puff of air doesn't change the meaning of the word.
Precisely. A phoneme is like a note on sheet music. You can have a middle C from a piano or a violin. The sound waves are totally different, but on the page, it's the same note. A phone is that abstract note.
Got it. Okay, that clicks. So that's the sound. What's morphology?
That's the meaning structure, the little bits of words that carry meaning, roots, suffixes, prefixes.
This is why our spelling is so weird sometimes.
This is exactly why English will sacrifice perfect sound spelling to preserve meaning. Take the words magic and magician.
Okay, so magic ends with a hard K sound, but magician has a soft she sound.
But look at the spelling, M-A-G-I-C in both. We keep that C so your brain sees the connection. Oh, a magician is a person who does magic.
So morphology wins out over phonology in that case.
It does. Which leads us to the third layer, orthography, the visual marks. English is what we call a deep orthography.
As in the opposite of shallow.
Right. A shallow language like Italian is simple. One letter, one sound, very few exceptions. English is deep because it's a mess. We have, though, bow, cough, rough.
Same spelling pattern, 4 totally different sounds.
It's a nightmare for a beginner, and that's the core challenge. How do you get a kid to connect those inconsistent marks on the page to those abstract sound categories in their head?
Which is the perfect pivot to the next big question, the chicken or the egg problem.
Yeah.
We need to talk about something called phonological awareness, or PA.
Right. PA is basically your ability to play with the sounds of language. It's all in your head, no letters involved yet.
The source mentions the elision task as the classic test for this.
Yeah. So you'd ask a child, say the word cup.
Cup.
Now say it again, but don't say the K sound.
Nope.
And if they can do that, they have phonological awareness. They can mentally reach into that word, grab a sound, and just delete it.
Which is a pretty high-level skill.
It is.
So this was the big debate for years, right? Does having that skill make you a good reader? Or does learning to read teach you that skill?
That was the defining question of the 90s. And Wagner, one of our authors, led this huge 5-year longitudinal study to figure it out. They followed hundreds of kids from kindergarten all the way to 4th grade.
That sounds incredibly difficult to pull off.
It's a ton of work, but it's the only way to really see cause and effect over time. And the result was, well, it was fascinating. It wasn't one or the other.
It was both.
It was both. It's bidirectional, a two-way street.
So good sound awareness helps you read better later on.
Yes. The study showed that clearly. But it also showed that as kids learned their letters, as they learned the orthography, their ability to play those sound games got better.
That makes so much sense. If you ask me to break down a complicated word now, the first thing I do is picture it spelled out in my head.
You're using the visual to anchor the sound.
Right.
And that's why just training listening skills in a vacuum doesn't work that well.
Mm-hmm.
The most effective interventions train sound awareness and letter knowledge together.
That's what the source calls synthetic phonics, right?
Correct. Things like an exercise they call chaining.
I thought that was so clever.
Yeah.
So you'd show a kid the word mat, then you ask them to change one letter to make cat.
Then change cat to at.
So you're forcing that connection. You're manipulating the sound, but you're using the visual symbol to do it. You're welding the systems together.
And this reciprocal loop, this self-reinforcing cycle, it doesn't just stop at phonics. It applies to vocabulary, too.
The old Matthew effect. The rich get richer.
Exactly. Reading more helps you build vocabulary, and having a bigger vocabulary helps you read more complicated things. It's a snowball.
But if it's a snowball, that means where you start really, really matters.
It matters immensely, and that gets us to the development side of things. We used to have this really passive idea called readiness.
Oh, this part just killed me. The source says they used to test kids on skipping, like with their feet.
It sounds absolutely absurd now, doesn't it? But the theory was that reading was a biological milestone, like puberty. You just had to wait for the child's nervous system to ripen.
And if a kid couldn't skip, they weren't ready, so the teachers would just, wait.
They'd wait, which we now know is the worst possible thing you can do.
So we threw that out.
We threw that out for a model called emergent literacy, which is the idea that the road to reading begins long before school.
The source said that newborns, we're talking 2-day-old babies, already prefer the sound of their native language.
They're learning the rhythms in the womb. But here's this fascinating trade-off. At birth, an infant is a universal listener. They can distinguish every single phone in every language on Earth.
So a baby in Boston can hear the tonal differences in Mandarin that I can't.
Perfectly. Better than we can. But by the time they're 1 year old, they lose that ability. Their brain tunes itself to the specific frequencies of their home language. They become a specialist.
Use it or lose it.
Essentially. And that tuning process is what lays the foundation for everything else. It's why the single strongest predictor of future reading success is a child's alphabet knowledge when they walk into kindergarten.
But this is where that socioeconomic gap really becomes obvious.
It really does. There's just this tremendous variability in how much print exposure and sound play kids get at home. Some kids show up on day one with thousands of hours of experience. Others show up with close to zero.
And the source mentions a very specific intervention for this: dialogic reading.
I love dialogic reading. It's so powerful. It's not about reading to a child, which can be super passive.
Right, where the kid just sits there and listens.
Exactly. Dialogic reading flips the script. The goal is to get the child to become the storyteller.
So instead of you saying, "The dog ran up the hill," you point at the picture and ask,
What's that dog doing? Or why do you think he looks so happy? You make the child use their own words to describe what's happening. That act of retrieval is what builds the oral language skills they need later.
It's such a simple shift, but it puts the cognitive load on the child. Okay, so we've got the machinery, we've got the development, but we have to talk about when it goes wrong. We need to talk about dyslexia.
A crucial piece of this puzzle, for sure.
And the source defines it as unexpectedly poor performance. That word unexpected is doing a lot of work there.
It is. It means we're not talking about a child with vision problems or a child who just hasn't been taught. We're talking about a bright, capable kid who for some reason just can't make sense of text.
So let's bust the biggest myth right away. I feel like most people still believe this. Dyslexia is not seeing words backward. It's not reading was as saw.
It is absolutely not. That's a myth about a visual processing error. Dyslexia is a phonological processing error.
But I've seen kids do that. I mean, I did it. I confused B and O all the time when I was little.
And that's completely normal. Think about it. In the real world, orientation doesn't change what something is. A coffee cup on its side is still a coffee cup. Your brain is trained to ignore orientation.
Until reading.
Until reading. Suddenly, B and D are the same shape, just flipped, and it means something totally different. It just takes a lot of practice to train the brain that now all of a sudden direction matters.
So reversals are a symptom of being a beginner, not the cause of the disorder itself.
Precisely. They haven't had enough successful practice to lock that rule in.
Okay, what about the other big one? Eye movements. Tracking issue.
Same story. If you watch a poor reader's eyes, they do jump all over the place. The saccades are erratic, but, and this is the critical experiment, if you give a person with dyslexia a text that's easy enough for them to read, their eyes move perfectly normally.
So the eyes are jumping around because the brain is struggling to decode, not the other way around.
Correct. The erratic movement is a symptom, not the cause. It's not a muscle problem in the eye.
So if it's not visual and it's not muscular, we're back to the sounds.
We're always back to phonology. The definitive test for dyslexia is asking someone to read pseudo words, nonsense words, like blap or ket.
Because you can't have memorized the shape of blap.
You can't. A smart kid might memorize hundreds of real words by their visual shape. But to read blap, you have to use the machinery. You have to sound it out, and that's where the system breaks down.
The source gets into some subtypes here, like phonological dyslexia versus surface dyslexia. Can you break that down?
It's a subtle but important distinction. Phonological dyslexia is that classic inability to sound out new words, failing the blap test.
Right.
Surface dyslexia was thought to be trouble with the irregular words, the exceptions like yacht or kernel, words you can't sound out.
So trouble with rules versus trouble with exceptions.
That was the theory. But what the research found was really interesting. When you compare kids with surface dyslexia to younger kids who just happen to read at the same overall level, the difference vanishes.
You mean they just look like a typical younger reader?
Exactly. So what we were calling surface dyslexia is often just a developmental lag. They're delayed, but they're on the same path. But phonological dyslexia, that's different. That deficit remains even when you compare them to younger kids. It seems to be the true constitutional core of the disorder.
That's a huge distinction. It means all roads really do lead back to that phonological core.
They do. Whether you're talking about typical development or the ways it can break down, it all comes back to that fundamental connection between the sounds of our language and the symbols on a page.
It really changes how you look at a book. I'm not just seeing words anymore. I'm seeing this incredible unnatural interface between two totally different systems in my brain.
An interface that isn't pre-installed, it has
Mhm.
to be built wire by wire, connection by connection.
Which brings me to a final thought for you. We talked about how infants are tuning their brains to phones from just a few days old. I mean, they're starting their literacy journey before they can even hold their own heads up.
It's a pretty sobering thought.
It is, because
Mhm.
it means the classroom doesn't start at age 5. It starts in the delivery room. And it just makes me wonder, how does that reshape our responsibility for the acoustic environment we create for our kids? If we're the architects of that initial tuning, are we making sure the signal is clear enough?
That's the question we all need to be asking.
Thanks for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.